Good afternoon, everyone. You made it, or maybe I should say good morning to you all. My name is Tooske Ragas, and I welcome you at this TOPdesk SEE live Q&A, in which I am joined by Mr. Roy Atkinson, writer, industry analyst, CEO, and principal advisor at Clifton Butterfield, and Annemarie Wolfrat, Agile Transition Coach at TOPdesk. Welcome to the both of you, too.
Thank you.
Good to see you here today.
Good to be here.
Today will be all about asking what if. We'll be asking questions to get us thinking about the future of ITSM and how it can help us create customer happiness. Now, these questions will focus on 5 key areas of service excellence: customer, people and culture, process, integration and automation, and supplier. And please, if you are with us today, if you have a question of our own, put it in the chat, because we have a team ready behind the scenes to answer your questions, and of course we'll be closely monitoring them. So at the end of this live Q&A, we'll pick a few and put them to our 2 guests here. All right, are you ready, Roy, Annemarie?
Definitely.
Then let's get started with the first area of expertise: customer. What if the homebody economy were here to stay? How does ITSM need to evolve in order to meet customers' rising expectations and make them happy?
Okay, I'll start.
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks, Annemarie. Whether or not the homebody economy is here to stay, work from anywhere is here to stay. The idea that people can do their IT support, service design, service work in the background, administer the servers, administer everything going out to customers is here to stay. They can do that from anywhere, and it's important to have that technology in focus and in function. Trying to accomplish how your services can help customers rather than focus on the IT itself is key. Outside in, from the customer inside rather than from IT going outside. That customer focus is shifting, has shifted, and will continue to shift.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. To me, it's not really a question what if the homebody economy is here to stay. Indeed, it is. Hybrid working is really going to be staying for I don't know how long, because we've learned as people, as companies, as countries, that it's possible. That there are so many benefits, not only internal within your company, but also for the environment and for people's mental health. There are so many reasons why hybrid working is never going to go away. But for the service management professional, that means that the carefully crafted landscape that you built in all these years with all your people inside your company, yeah, that changed. And that will not change back to the way that it was. So the agility of the service management professional also needs to stay. And I think that's going to be a really interesting next step in the so-called era of the customer. Because, yeah, this customer is not in the same building, same country anymore as you potentially. So you need to listen even closer to what your customer actually needs and what your customer wants in order to be able to still deliver that service excellence to that, more diverse landscape than we ever had.
And I think also, Annemarie, those are all great points. And I think also customers expect more speed now. One of the things that we demonstrated during the pandemic is that we can change things really, really fast
if
when
we have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, indeed. And what's really nice for me to see as well is that I was worried a bit when the pandemic started, like, okay, now we are able to respond this fast because there is a need outside of our influence. So we need to, and we will. Will that die down a bit? But I really haven't seen that happen much. And I think that's a really great gain. And I know it's a bit weird to talk of a pandemic as something positive, but I think that's really something positive that it has given us in this field of expertise.
Right. All right, well then let's talk about people and culture. What if your customer base's diverse backgrounds and experiences were the key to customer happiness? What would that look like? You talked a little bit about the customer already, how you have to get to know them. What's your take on this?
I think it's really important to really listen, to understand, rather than to just listen to respond as a service management professional, and to be able to truly listen to understand your customer. The diverse background of your customer is something that you really have to take into account and to consider and to really aim to understand. And I really think this is indeed one of the keys for service management professionals to be able to deliver service excellence. If you are truly able to speak in the language of your customer, considering their diverse backgrounds. What do you think, Roy?
I think that in addition to all the location diversity, the racial diversity, the ethnic diversity of people who have been our customers all along, which we're paying more attention to now, we have to remember that there's kind of a Heisenberg uncertainty principle involved in customer experience, right? We can predict statistically that some percentage of our customers will respond in a given way to something that they encounter in their customer journey. We can't predict individual responses. And so we have to be careful that we don't assume that once we design a customer experience in a certain way, that that's the experience the customer is going to have. There's a difference between customer experience and customer experience design, and I think that's not clear in a lot of people's heads. The best way to wrap our thinking around this is to get customer feedback as rapidly, as near to real time as possible.
Do you mean, Roy, that if the way I get out of bed in the morning might change if I'm the customer, the way I experience the service that is given to me?
Yes, the way I might experience a service might be different from the way Annemarie experiences it, the way you experience it. Some people love, for example, a large theme park with a mouse involved that shall remain unnamed, and they swear by the customer experience of that. That particular environment would not be pleasant to me. I don't want to stand in line for 4 hours after paying hundreds of dollars to do so. That's not a pleasant experience for me, but that's me individually. Part of that is I don't have kids. You can't predict an individual's response, but you can statistically predict that the largest number of your customers will find this particular a good route to go, a good touch point, a good application to use, a good way to go about doing their business. But just you have to be a little bit cautious about it.
Right. Now, having said that, for everyone who's with us today, we'd love to know where you're from and to learn how diverse this afternoon is for all of us. So please use the chat and let us know where you are, where you're from. All right, next area is the area of process. What if an organization chose to focus solely on ITSM as their primary means of delighting their customers? Would that or would that not be enough? Could that work?
I'll jump in first on this one, Annemarie, if that's okay. Let's broaden the question. Let's reframe that a little bit and ask, what if an organization chose to focus on service management? Let's take the IT out of it and look at service management in the broadest sense. Service management predates IT. IT adopted some of the principles of existing service management and refined things along the way. And IT has really become quite expert at handling service management, however that's done. So we shouldn't be limiting service management to IT. It's okay to talk about ITSM when you are referring to IT, but when we're talking about the rest of the organization, let's talk about service management, and that's focusing on the design of the services that are provided, the delivery of services that are provided, and making sure that those services are actually focused on producing positive results for our business and for our customers. And technology underlies all of that, but it isn't the main thing that causes good experience, good delivery of services. Good thinking produces good services. Clear design, right?
It's still the people.
It's still the people. It's always the people.
Yeah, to me, this is a really interesting thought experiment, really. What if a company were to use indeed their service management, because I couldn't agree with Roy more on that one, to take this in a broader scope than just IT service management, as their primary means to delight their customers. When I think about this, I think when you look at the economy as it is nowadays, with so many companies earning their money, their keep, by delivering services, they sort of have no option to see the way that they deliver their service as their primary way to delight their customers, and therefore their sole survival. Because if you are not able to delight your customers nowadays, your customer has an option to move elsewhere. And I know that within the service management landscape, this is not really a common thought yet, because my employee works for me. So yeah, they have to take my services. We've seen over the course of the last year that this is not really true. I can choose to also use other pieces of software. If we stay within the IT landscape, I can buy my office supplies elsewhere. For my home office, I have options. And of course, this is not me saying you should be scared, because that's never a good reason to do something. But it is a perspective that you have to take into consideration, from my perspective at least. That it is no longer the case that your customer will come to you regardless because you deliver services to your employees. That perspective too has changed over the course of the last couple of years. So to me, this is a really interesting question to say, okay, if a company focuses solely on their service management delivery to delight their customers, I think they're on the up and up to beat their competition.
Everyone.
And
no,
going back to something you said, Annemarie, shadow IT, we call it, right? When employees choose to use a product that isn't specifically supported by IT, or maybe not the organization at all. I've had that experience where I was working inside an organization, and one of the business units in that organization decided that they were going to use Google Docs instead of what was provided. They just went outside and decided it was better to use that. Employees may be using different tools like Slack to communicate with each other outside of the networks that the organization has provided. So we need to be aware of that. And what that indicates to me, what Shadow IT has always communicated to me, is that we're not careful about how we're designing the services that we're providing. Right. It means we're missing something along the way. Yeah. It means that there are holes in our service design. So we need to pay attention to that. And that's something that we can address as time goes on. But don't take shadow IT. We must block that. We must prevent employees from doing that. That's not the idea. The idea is to find out why and what it is they need to get done that they can't do within the services that we already provide.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because to me, whenever this happens, it is actually an open door for you to improve your services further, provided that message reaches you, of course. It's an open invitation that there is indeed a flaw in your service design that you can improve. And again, delight your customers with a solution that you can then provide based on the actual need that they have, which you may have misinterpreted in the past or simply has changed because of changing demands.
Yeah. All right.
And
yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, delight your employees, because as we have learned also, especially recently, having engaged and happy employees has a tremendous effect on the customer experience as well. They're going to serve customers better. There's so much research available on this. There's a huge study by Gallup. There are other studies out there. Some companies have built themselves on improving employee experience. So it's important to pay attention to that as well. And that's one of the indicators that they might not be as engaged as we think, is if they're going outside our service designs to achieve something. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the favorite questions in the Gallup Q12 of me is, I have the tools that I need to do my job well. It's a very simple question, but when you ask this question not only once but repetitively, this constantly provides you input to keep your employees and therefore your customers more engaged.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is all from the perspective that your employees are human beings. But on the subject of automation and automation, what
Where are we going now?
if automation were to take over ITSM, meaning that all tasks once carried out by humans were now completely automated, no people left? Would it still be possible to make your customers happy?
We have no answer to that.
That would be disappointing.
That is a very large question. I do not know how to answer it. That's tough because, as we know, automation is here and it's going to increase. It's great because of the things that allows us to do, in that we can take those repetitive processes and procedures that we do over and over and over again, automate them, and have them run very nicely, as long as they're optimized. That's key. And get done faster and more consistently than we probably could do them as people. But when people start to interact with that system, what happens? One of the things that happens is that people come to a point where there isn't an appropriate response. You've had it happen, I'm sure. If you go to a company's website and there's a drop-down menu of selections of subjects that you want to contact them about, and your issue is not in that drop-down. Okay, now what? Now what? You want to talk to a person. You want to make a contact. So making things efficient and effective in terms of automating them, optimizing your processes first, automating what you can and what you should, but always give the customer a way around it somehow. I think that's key.
You know what? I think because I've had this happen to me more than once, sadly enough. And that experience is actually worse to me than a product that isn't exactly what I thought it would be. The product, okay, fine. I deal with it, or I change it, or exchange it, whatever. But trying to speak to a person and not being able to find a telephone number anywhere, or get someone to email me back, is actually a bigger problem to me than just the product that wasn't exactly as I expected.
It's a massive turn down when you see a service provider which is actually not providing a service, or at least not the service that you wanted.
Right.
So then why should I come back at all?
Right.
And that indeed, as you said, it happened to you more than once. I think it happened to all of us more than once. We're like, please give me a telephone number. I just want to call a human being. That said, I do believe that whatever process you can design, you can automate. But people don't let themselves be put in a process 24/7. Not for everything that they might need, you can design a process. Yet, with the intelligence that we have, you can therefore not automate it. I believe that will be the case in the future. But for now, the things that we can, in fact, automate are things that we have to have a service design for. We have to have a process for to be able to automate it. I do think that for people in service management, it'll actually make their job more fun. We just spoke about engaged employees. I think when we're able to automate a lot of standard services that we provide for our customers, that means that the people that we employ, because for me it's very important that the people remain because they can make the difference, are actually able to indeed pick up the phone and ask you, Tooske, what is the challenge? What is your issue? What can we help you with? And maybe you were not the first one to ask this question. And then again, we can standardize something and we can automate it.
Right.
But the people, in my opinion, will still make the difference there and delight the customers.
But I hear you saying we're not there yet.
We are not there to automate everything.
Will we ever get there?
Mm-hmm. I think we probably will. But even at that, as I mentioned before, there's that Heisenberg uncertainty principle where we can't predict an individual customer's response or their particular question or their attitude or whatever it happens to be. And my friend Chris Shagnon has done a lot of research on this. He's a PhD candidate at Worcester Polytechnic Institute here in the United States. And his take is, don't ever give the customer a dead end. When you are automating processes and you're providing artificial intelligence and machine learning, don't make it a dead end. Always give the customer a way to get someplace else in the system without backing all the way out and starting again, right? Give them a way to connect to a human. Give them a way to get to a knowledge base that's not the one they're looking at. So give them options. And there's so many options. There's live chat, there's video, there's so many ways to connect. Let's take advantage of those technologies as well as the automation capability. That automation capability is advancing rapidly. It's going to continue to advance, but so far it doesn't have empathy, and that's key. And that's one of the keywords that has bubbled to the top during the pandemic. Right? It's been empathy, and it's empathy of our employees for our customers. It's empathy of the customers for our employees. They understand, people are working from home. They may not have their hands on all the tools and screens that they had when they were in the office, and they don't have a buddy to talk to and say, hey, this person's got a question about that. I know you're an expert, so can you help me? They have to go about it a different way, and they're a little more patient. So empathy is something that's become very important, even more important than it always has been. I've always thought that there are two problems a customer is trying to solve when they contact you. One of them is whatever technical or product issue it happens to be. And the other one is their own frustration with that. So it's empathy and it's the technical solution. Those two things go hand in hand, and they're both very important. And empathy is not there yet with AI, despite what the movies might say. Not quite there yet.
Yeah, Tooske, you asked, will we ever get there? I don't know either. I don't have a vision in the future that will tell me that.
Actually, the other question is, do we want to?
Exactly, because I think that one of the things, at least I really learned about myself the last year, which I think a lot of people have learned, that we are in need of human connection. Right. And indeed, empathy is a really important factor there. But when we automate things, we still find new things to have a human connection. And you see that also in new social media frameworks popping up, for example, in the last year. It's all about the human connection. So whatever we automate, that frees up space, frees up time for the people to have that human connection again, and create more value for customers as such. So I think more automation, the better, because it frees up time, it frees up space.
Right. All right, moving on to the last area, that of the supplier. What if an ecosystem was introduced where all ITSM suppliers could open up their tool for third-party initiatives? How would that affect the customer's experience?
I think that could be a great way to look at the environment that you provide for your customers. There is one but to me here. There should be a solid home base. There should be one place where I can always return, a single point of truth, a single point of contact where I can move back to. Because when you open up your network to third-party solutions, that also opens up the possibility that you do not have total grip anymore on the experience that you provide for your customer, because you cannot influence everything in that entire complex landscape that you then have opened up. But you are in control of that home base. And I think as long as you keep, be mindful of that home base and provide a really good solution there where people can always come back and find, this is where I can go next. I think this could be really interesting. How about you, Roy?
I think that the way that you articulated that goes back to what I was saying about the AI systems that provide a way to connect without backing out. It's very organic when you think about it. People are trying to connect with each other. It's like the roots of a tree finding its way through the rocks or the cement or whatever. It's amazing how things can grow, and that's one of the things that we've learned is that people are going to connect in ways we didn't even think of, and people want to connect in ways we didn't even think of because they had to and they wanted to. So let's pay attention to that, and let's think about how we are influencing that experience. That's brilliantly said, Annemarie, that once we add a component that we don't control into the system, then we've changed the experience for somebody, and we don't have that overview of the experience anymore. We've added even more diversity, going back to our original question, right? We've added diversity to the systems themselves by doing that, and it becomes kind of tricky to do that. So we have to be open and careful at the same time, which is a difficult road to walk. It's a narrow focus. We have to stay focused on where we're going, but be open to the possibility that there might be more than one path to get there. I think that's key.
Yeah. How about protecting your own system if you invite others to join it? Could it be a safety issue or?
I don't really see it as protecting your system as protecting your data. And the data is not yours, the data is your customers. And with that, I think you cannot be too careful. I mean, it's the law nowadays, but even if it wasn't, you can't. And whenever you open up your system, there is data of individuals in said system. And I think that is something that a lot of companies are a little bit frightened for, and maybe rightfully so, because when you don't have ample grip on where this data is going, that's a potential liability. So I wouldn't so much say the system, but the data in the system.
Right.
I was talking with a cybersecurity specialist the other day, and I was talking about some of the work that I've done, and I worked with scientists whose research was publicly funded, and therefore their published findings would be public. And I had a difficult time explaining to them that security was still an issue. They said, well, we don't care. It's going to be public anyway. What do we care? I said, well, what if they don't take your data? What if they change your data?
Yeah.
And then the light bulbs went on. It was like, oh, 15 years of research suddenly gone. And that's really super important too. And to make sure that we have cybersecurity in place, that we've done the appropriate testing and so forth. We've seen some recent examples where it was fairly obvious that nobody ever tested these systems for, did penetration testing or any of that, because they were wide open. They were easily hacked, as we say, incorrectly, and became just fonts of personal information for cyber criminals and so forth. So there is absolutely security involved in all of this, and it's everybody's job in the organization. It's not just IT or a security office. It's everybody needing to pay attention, and I think there's been a good focus on training people appropriately, at least in the basics. They don't have to understand everything, but don't click that link.
Yeah. Don't do the stupid things. Yeah.
Have the sign.
Don't be that person.
Don't be that guy. Right. Exactly.
All right. You two. Some of our viewers have put in questions to you.
Cool.
Now, let me go here. Question number 1. IT support operators want to be able to help people and use their judgment. Yet our work is growingly scripted with limited time for customer contact. How do we make work fun for IT support operators and increase their happiness? That employer happiness you were talking about. Employee happiness.
I think it links back to a conversation that we are a part of our conversation earlier. Increasingly scripted, I must admit, is not something that I would be very happy about.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a rather creative person, so maybe I'm a bit biased here on this particular question. But what we said about automation, I think applies here too. When you are able to script something, you are also able to provide these answers to the customers without them having to reach you. So for example, if you use knowledge-centered support, every time that you have a question and you add this information to your knowledge base, the next customer is able to find it themselves. And then you sort of have scripted it, but not for a phone call, but for self-service. And that frees up time to answer the question that is being asked for the first time.
Right, in a less scripted way.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree completely on scripts. I agree with you, Annemarie. I've never been a fan of scripts. I think that scripts are problematic, except where there's some legal or compliance requirement, right? There may be a portion of the conversation that must be scripted because it's particular language that the lawyers require or the government requires. And that's fine. And a lot of times when you're having a conversation with somebody who's doing support for you, they'll say, I'm going to read you this paragraph now. It's required. I have to tell you this.
True.
And that's fine. The rest of the time, don't give people scripts. Give them guidelines. Say, educate them in terms of where the railings are. And say, don't go past this. I remember when I started out years and years ago, I was in a bank. I was in a consumer lending department. And I had $5,000 line, which meant at any loan application up to $5,000, I could approve myself without going to a superior. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. That's a guideline. And now I often question applications that were smaller than $5,000, but that's a guideline that I had to follow. But it didn't say I must stop now because it is $5,000. That, they didn't give me a script. They gave me a guideline. And I think that's important. So let people phrase things and think about things the way that they think about them. That's what you pay them for. You're paying a human there. Script what you can. And KCS, Knowledge Center Service, is a great way to go about making sure that gets published accurately and in the right way and as rapidly as possible for people to use as self-service and self-help.
One dimension I would like to add, I just thought about, when you use KCS or scripts, I prefer the KCS. One benefit I have seen a lot is you are able to onboard new employees faster. Mm-hmm. Because it is not that I have to sit next to you, Tooske, and to see how you are doing your job for multiple weeks and trying to absorb everything that you know. I can use this system that has all the answers, and that can help people to onboard way faster, because a lot of the questions that have been asked before I can find. And I really like that analogy of that playing field, Roy, that you mentioned. This is the playing field that I have. And whenever I receive a phone call or a chat message or an email with a question that is not covered yet, I still have colleagues. So there I do see a benefit.
Yeah, and I will reinforce your emphasis on KCS. If people in the audience are not familiar with KCS, get familiar with KCS. It's from so many standpoints, and I've seen organizations that have cut their onboarding time by 40%, 50%, 60%. Get people in the seats doing productive work really fast because they're using that methodology. So look into it.
When we then come back to the engagement that we previously mentioned, bonus points.
Mm-hmm.
Good. All right, next question. I don't have a name, but somebody says, my organization sees the benefits of AI, but we never get to take the first step as we always have more urgent tasks. I'm afraid that we will miss the boat if we wait too long. When and how should we start?
You want to open the floor?
Sure. I would say you can automate things without using AI. You can automate processes. So start by examining the processes that are taking up the most time. Start there. Look at them. See what you can first eliminate. Second, optimize. Third, automate. So you're cutting down the time that's taking you away from the forward motion. And this is going to be reinforced because once you start examining the possibilities of doing that, you're going to be able to automate more and more, which is going to open up more and more time for you to work on the projects that you're thinking about so that you can be looking forward to AI and bringing it in. There's work to be done up front, and don't let people minimize that. Oh, just bring the AI and everything will be fine. No. You have to do that upfront work. You have to make sure that data is accessible. You have to make sure that you have enough data and that you have made it in such a form that it's accessible to the systems that you're going to put in place. But start by automating everything that you can and get rid of the things that you don't need, first of all. So optimize and automate, and then the speed with which you can do that will start to increase.
Yeah, to build on that, what I've seen often in organizations is indeed exactly this. Like, we want to get started, but where do we start? Or we don't know how to start. And I really want to reiterate what Roy just said about the data. You can start building your data set today. In fact, you have started building your data set years ago. You just have to alter it to make sure that you will have what you need in the future. And yeah, the annoying thing is you do not know what you need in the future. But the more that you automate your processes and you think about the data that you need for these processes, the smarter you will become, and the more you will learn what you will need in the future. And naturally, there will be things that you have not thought of. We're human. Sucks to be you. But still, everything that you are doing today, if you're doing that with the mindset of this is where I'm going in the future, it's not extra work. It's eliminating waste today to be ready for that future.
Yeah, then because the next question is related, and you've already half answered it, I think. When is automation worth the investment, and how do I know which tasks to automate first?
I love what my friend Doug Tedder says about this. He says, automate the obvious. And when I was out giving a series of talks about AI and how things were going to change as AI and automation became more prevalent, I took the little robot dog from Doctor Who, K9. I don't know if you remember K9 from the old Doctor Who. And I had a graphic of that up on the board, and I said, what part of this dog do you automate first? And people would usually get around to guessing that it was the tail because it only had to do one thing. So it's pretty obvious to automate that wagging tail on the dog, right? But we have tail wags all over our organizations. We have simple things that we do over and over again, back and forth, like the dog's tail, that we can start right there and automate the obvious.
I really love that analogy. I'm going to steal it.
Yeah, me too. I can use it in my house. All right, now a question from Christina. In our company in the Netherlands, we saw a huge shift last year in the services that IT and facility support. While IT can keep to support remotely, facility is struggling between services on premise that look obsolete now and the demand for defining new services like organizing professional webinars. What is a good way to define a new service on a relatively short notice? And is there even any such thing?
I think last year has proven there is. And I agree with what Christina says. Maybe in the landscape of IT, it's easier to respond faster. At the same time, the fact that it might be easier to respond faster is because they built on years of experience, and hybrid working became already more normal pre-pandemic. The important thing here, I think, is it sounds, but I don't want to assume too much here, but it sounds from the question that it is not really clear for the facilities department or people what is actually needed, what is the actual need of the customer today. And maybe it is not the fact that the service needs to be able to be up and running really fast, which of course, if I were Christina, I would love the same thing. But if they were at least transparent about the process in the way that they are designing the new services, if it's a new service, and be honest and transparent about when they can expect when, I think that would already help immensely.
And I think that the way that you discover these things is by dialogue. And I'll give you a real, it's an example from my own background. It's kind of stupid, but it works.
Oh, we love it.
I was sitting in my office one day and I got a phone call. This is when I was doing support for people who were using Apple hardware, when I was consulting with Apple. Someone calls me up and says, I need a thing for my thing. That's what they said. And so, okay, that's
Wonderful
really
language.
unclear.
That could have been me.
Totally. And so now I'm left to discover what the thing is and what the thing does. So by a series of questions, I was saying things like, is this something that attaches to your computer, or is it part of your computer? What is it? No, it attaches to my computer. Okay. What does it look like? Well, it's kind of long and skinny. Oh, it's just like a wire? Yes, it's like a wire. Does it attach to the front or the back? Attaches to the back. Okay, can you see the back from where you are? Is there a graphic on the back? Yes, it looks like a little piece of paper coming out of a box. Oh, printer. Okay, you need a printer cable. So through a series of questions, I was able to discern what the customer wanted. Started out with a thing for my thing and wound up with a printer cable. And I think that we can do that same kind of process. It's kind of Socratic learning, right? It's asking questions until we get to what it is that they want or what they need. And it from other lines of business, it comes to things like, well, the customer wants a bunch of boards to put together. What is the customer going to use them for? They're going to use them to hold books. Oh, so they want shelves. Okay, they don't necessarily want boards. They want shelves. Or they don't want a drill, they want a hole to put a screw in. It's all of those kinds of questions that you have to get to discern what they want. And again, it's dialogue, it's questioning, it's knowing a little bit about what they do, get to know their business processes, get to know what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish. That's super important.
One of my favorite service design exercises that I do pretty often, why people might hate me, is the 5 whys. When someone tells me something, I ask why, and they explain a little bit more, and then I ask why again until we reach the 5 whys, and sometimes maybe we reach 7 whys or 8 whys, until I truly understand what it is that they want. And very often it's not only me that then truly understands, it's them as well.
Yeah.
And this is such a fun conversation to have time and time again. And it even happened to me, like I only went through with this because it's you. And then I think, okay, I at least have some social capital, because it can be annoying to have that conversation, but the end result is always so much better once you go through this.
All right, one final question from Thomas. He says, my organization considers to introduce a chatbot to offer 24/7 support. Now, I see the benefits, but I am afraid that the customer experience will degrade when the chatbot is not good enough. What do you recommend?
Here's the key. It is educating the customers on what the limitations of the chatbot are, and making sure that the chatbot is not too limited for what the customers need. Let's use an example. If you want to have a chatbot that can augment your staff, for example, if your support staff isn't there on weekends, if they're not there on Saturday and Sunday, which a fairly high percentage of support staff aren't, if they're not in critical organizations, then you can use a chatbot to automate conversations with people who might be working over the weekend. They have an issue, they have a question, they can go in and talk to the chatbot a little bit. But when they reach that point where something has to happen, give them a way either to create a support ticket that's going to be handled on the next business day and let them know it's going to be handled on the next business day. It's not going to be 15 minutes from now, it's going to be the next day. Let them know that it is a chatbot. I think that's important, and I think there's a lot of dialogue around whether we should let people know they're talking to automation or not. I think they should know. So one of the best experiences I've ever had with a chatbot was one for credit card services that I use. I clicked on the bot, I opened up the window, and it gave me 3 choices. Do you want to ask about this? Do you want to ask about this? Or do you want to ask about this? Now, right away, I know that if it's outside that, I click on the other, and it takes me to a person.
Yeah.
So that kind of system is very helpful. Whereas if you're stuck back and forth with the chatbot and the chatbot is saying, thank you very much, and it hasn't answered your question, then we have a little bit of a problem.
And we have your situation again
Exactly.
that you actually described before.
All right, thank you so much. Roy, Annemarie, stay with me for a little while as I try to recap what we learned today. And if I'm not doing my job well, then please let me know and tell me the right thing. We mentioned 5 various areas. The first one being customer. I'd say the homebody economy is probably here to stay, and it requires a higher level of agility in ITSM professionals than they were used to in the traditional economy. And also, ITSM needs to move away from location-based thinking and into more value-based and results-based thinking and service design. Anything to add to that?
We could go on for days, but that sums it up very nicely.
We're moving on to people and culture, because we've talked about diversity as well. It's important for ITSM professionals to speak the same language as their customer for a strong, effective feedback loop. And the more diverse backgrounds and experiences there are, the more you're forced to carefully listen to the voice of the customer with as little assumptions as possible. To realize this, we should be able to design for diversity to begin with and allow for flexibility in our systems, in our policies and responses. It's fun here to mention that corporate anthropologist Tooske Ragas will focus on the modern workforce and the necessity of diversity during her keynote presentation at SEE 2021. So make sure you're there. I will tell you later how you can be there. The area of process, that topic was solely focusing on ITSM to delight your customer. Now, if this will work for or against you heavily depends on your core business. To delight your customer, the right way to go for organizations is focusing on the design and delivery of services and include more than only IT. How am I doing so far?
Good, yeah, well. Doing good. And I would just add to that try not to focus too much on the process. People don't care about your process. Your customers really don't care. Make sure that they're effective and efficient for you, but remember that the customer is not looking at your process, and don't concentrate so much on the process that you forget to deliver the value that they need.
Point taken. Integration and automation. We agreed that one way or another, the human touch or empathy, as you said, Roy, is key for service excellence to be able to take that extra step for your customer. And perhaps at some future time, real artificial intelligence will be capable of empathy, but we are nowhere near that yet. Hannah Fry, who is Associate Professor in Mathematics of Cities, will discuss what algorithms and artificial intelligence means for our society during SEE 2021. Another good reason to be there. Now, supplier level. Opening up your tool for third-party initiatives as an ITSM supplier would open up a world of possibilities beyond anything we've ever seen before, but it also holds a can of worms we've never seen before in terms of data protection, so be careful. Although allowing for greater tool integration and data sharing can reduce effort by allowing customers to adapt tools without customization.
Yes, spot on.
Good. I learned. And I think everyone, maybe that is enough learning for so far for today. Thank you so much for joining us at this live Q&A. Roy, thank you. Annemarie, thank you. The good news, dear people, is that the learning doesn't have to stop here. As I mentioned earlier, TOPdesk SEE 2021 is brought to you on the 15th of June, where ITSM thought leaders and CX experts will be sharing their secrets to customer happiness. So please join us online June 15th to begin your service department's digital transformation. You can register for free to secure your spot at see.topdesk.com. We hope to see all of you there. It'll be have to end with a little joke. I'll be delighted to see all of you there. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day, morning, afternoon, night, whatever time it is with you. It was great to be here. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
As an IT service manager, your job is to deliver customer happiness. That feeling of customer satisfaction. The assurance that you have thought of everything. It might sound simple, but to make it happen isn't really straightforward. At TOPdesk SEE 2021, you'll hear from keynote speakers, ITSM thought leaders, and customer happiness experts about how to take your organization's service delivery to the next level. I'm looking forward to see you there.